Caesarion was 17 years old when his tutor told him to turn around. He had been fleeing toward India. His mother had arranged a small fortune, guards, a route through the Red Sea ports. She had thought of everything, except the man she trusted to protect him. His tutor, Rodan, told the boy that Octavian had sent word. There was an offer. Come back to Alexandria, accept the throne, rule Egypt as your mother once did. Caesarion believed him. He turned around and walked directly into the soldiers waiting on the road. There was no trial, no audience with Octavian, no throne. The son of Julius Caesar was killed somewhere between the port and the city. His body was disposed of without ceremony. The phrase attributed to Octavian's advisor still survives. Too many Caesars is not good. What happened to Cleopatra in the 11 days between her capture and her death has been obscured by legend. The snake, the basket of figs, the defiant queen choosing her exit. But the sources, when read carefully, describe something else entirely. They describe a woman held prisoner in her own palace, her children used as leverage, her death arranged with such precision that historians still argue whether it was suicide at all. She did not die quickly. That was the point. After the naval disaster at Actium, Cleopatra had nearly a year to prepare. She tried to drag her remaining ships overland to the Red Sea. She planned an escape to India, to somewhere beyond Rome's reach. But Octavian's agents reached the Nabatean king first. Her fleet was burned in the harbour before she could launch it. By the summer of 30 BC, she was trapped in Alexandria with a dying cause and a dying man. Antony's remaining soldiers were deserting. His fleet surrendered without firing a shot. His cavalry rode directly into Octavian's camp and asked for terms. When Antony finally understood what was happening, he did not die well. He stabbed himself in the stomach but missed the vital organs. According to the sources, he was still breathing when his servants carried him to Cleopatra's mausoleum. They hoisted him through a window because she had already sealed the doors. He bled out slowly in her arms, unable to finish what he had started. The mausoleum had been built for exactly this purpose. Cleopatra had filled it with treasure, funeral goods, timber, kindling. The message to Octavian was clear. Come for me, and I will burn everything you want. What she did not anticipate was how quickly Rome would call her bluff. A man named Gaius Proculeius arrived at the mausoleum within hours of Antony's death. Antony himself, dying, had told Cleopatra to trust this man above all others in Octavian's entourage. He spoke to her through the sealed door, offering assurances. She demanded to know what would happen to her children. He offered nothing specific. While she negotiated, another Roman officer climbed a ladder and breached a window behind her. The accounts describe what happened next in clinical terms. Cleopatra saw the soldier. She reached for a dagger. One of her attendants shouted a warning. The Romans restrained her before she could use the blade. She was searched. A poisoned hairpin was found. She was then escorted under guard to the palace. Her treasure remained untouched. Octavian had gotten exactly what he wanted. The children were already in Roman custody. Alexander Helios, 10 years old. Cleopatra, Selene, his twin sister. Ptolemy, Philadelphus, 4. They had been seized when Octavian's forces entered the city. The sources do not describe where they were held or under what conditions. They simply note that Octavian detained them. When Cleopatra was brought to the palace, she understood the arrangement without it being stated. Her survival, her children's survival, her ability to negotiate at all, now depended entirely on cooperation. Octavian visited her personally. What passed between them has been the subject of speculation for 2,000 years. Plutarch describes her as disheveled, grieving, still wearing the marks of self-inflicted scratches and bruises from the struggle at the mausoleum. Other sources suggest she attempted to seduce him. Both versions serve Roman propaganda. What is documented is the content of their exchange. She asked what would happen to her. Octavian told her that her life would be spared. She asked about Egypt, about her children, about her throne. He gave her nothing. She told him directly, according to Livy. "I will not be led in a triumph." He did not respond. To understand what she feared, you have to understand what a Roman triumph actually was. The procession began before dawn in the Campus Martius. Prisoners marched first, in chains, through streets lined with spectators. Behind them came the spoils. Then the general in a gilded chariot, crowned with laurel, his face painted red to resemble Jupiter. The route wound through the city toward the Capitoline Hill. At the Temple of Jupiter, the ceremony concluded. The general made his offerings, and the prisoners, if they had survived the walk, were led aside to the adjacent prison and strangled. Cleopatra had watched this happen before. Her younger sister Arsinoe had been paraded through Rome in Caesar's triumph 16 years earlier. The sight of the young princess in chains had moved the crowd to unexpected pity. Caesar, sensing the political danger, had spared her life. Octavian remembered this. He remembered the sympathy that a royal prisoner could inspire. He remembered how close Caesar's triumph had come to embarrassment. Cleopatra in chains would not be walked to her execution. She would be the centerpiece of the largest celebration Rome had ever seen. And then, very publicly, she would be killed. The 11 days Cleopatra spent in the palace were not passive. She was allowed to arrange Antony's funeral. She was permitted visitors. She fell ill, stopped eating, seemed to be deliberately hastening her own death. The Romans assigned physicians to ensure she survived. According to Cassius Dio, Octavian sent a direct threat. If she died before his triumph, her children would suffer. It is difficult to say precisely what was meant by this. The sources are vague on such specifics. But the message had its intended effect. Cleopatra recovered. She ate. She cooperated. A spy, meanwhile, informed her of what Octavian would not say directly. She and her children were to be moved to Rome within 3 days. On the 12th of August, Cleopatra sent a letter to Octavian requesting permission to visit Antony's tomb one final time. He granted it. She returned to the palace, she bathed, she dined with her attendants. She sent another letter, this one sealed, to be delivered only after she was finished. By the time Octavian's men arrived responding to whatever was in that second letter, she was already dying. Her servant Iris was collapsed at her feet. Another attendant, Charmian, was straightening the queen's diadem. When the soldiers demanded to know if this was well done, Charmian replied that it was entirely fitting for the descendant of so many kings. Then she collapsed as well. Octavian sent for the Scilli, snake charmers from Libya who were famous for treating venom. They attempted to revive her, sucking at the supposed wound. They failed. No snake was ever found, no basket of figs, just 2 small marks on her arm that might have been anything. Caesarion was already dead by then, killed on the road back to Alexandria. The official date of his execution is recorded as August 29th, but the timing suggests he was intercepted much earlier. His brief reign as sole pharaoh, the 11 days between his mother's death and his own, was a legal fiction invented by Egyptian chroniclers to close a gap in the records. Antyllus, Antony's eldest son by a previous marriage, was executed on the same day as Caesarion. His tutor, Theodorus, was accused of stealing a precious stone from the boy's body. The sources note this detail without commentary. The 3 younger children were spared. They were taken to Rome and raised in Octavian's household by his sister Octavia, the woman Antony had abandoned for Cleopatra. The twins were paraded through the city in Octavian's triumph, walking in chains, behind an effigy of their mother, a portrait of Cleopatra on a golden couch, an asp clinging to her arm, the death she may not have chosen, made into spectacle anyway. Ptolemy. Philadelphus, the youngest, was not recorded as part of the procession. He may have died before reaching Rome. He may have been too young to walk the route. The sources simply stopped mentioning him. Alexander Helios disappears from history after the triumph. No death is recorded, but no life either. Cassius Dio mentions that Octavian spared both boys when Cleopatra Selene married years later. But this may be conventional language rather than confirmed fact. Only Cleopatra Selene survived to adulthood. She was married to Juba II, a king who had himself been paraded in chains as a child in Caesar's triumph decades earlier. They were given Mauritania to rule. She died around 6 BC, far from Egypt, far from Alexandria, far from the dynasty that ended with her mother's final letter. Octavian entered Alexandria on the 1st of August. He gave a speech of reconciliation at the gymnasium. He declined to visit the tombs of the Ptolemaic kings, remarking that he had come to see a king, not corpses. He did agree to view Alexander the Great. Egypt became a Roman province, administered directly by the emperor's representatives. The 3,000-year tradition of the pharaohs ended not with conquest, but with paperwork. Octavian became Augustus. The Republic became the Empire. Cleopatra was buried beside Antony in her unfinished mausoleum, per her request. Octavian granted this. It served his purpose. He wanted Antony remembered as an Egyptian, unmanned by foreign luxury, lost to Roman virtue. The tomb has never been found. A statue of Cleopatra that Caesar had erected in the Temple of Venus Genetrix remained standing in Rome. Images of her were prescribed in private homes, but not, apparently, in sacred spaces. Years later, someone walled over a fresco in Pompeii that depicted her with Caesarion. The painting was rediscovered in the 20th century, still vivid, still dangerous enough to hide. The snake became the story. It was easier than the truth. Easier than a woman held captive, her children used as hostages, her death arranged through implication and threat, and the quiet withdrawal of options until only one remained. Easier than the months of negotiation, the failed escapes, the systematic betrayal of everyone she trusted. Easier than the tutor who told a 17-year-old boy to turn around on the road to India because there was a throne waiting for him in Alexandria. The throne was a lie. The offer was a trap, and the boy walked into it because the alternative was to spend the rest of his life running from Rome, and he was tired, and someone he trusted told him it was safe to stop. This is how empires end, not with drama, but with procedure, not with villains, but with advisors, tutors, diplomats, and the careful management of outcomes. The children walked in chains through Rome. Then most of them vanished. If this video unsettled you, it was meant to. Like and subscribe. Hidden by time.